listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, just like any other time, we have another guest, another show. We have Dallin Candland. He is the author of a new book that we are going to talk about. It is God is Trying to Talk to Me, a collection of poems by Dallin Candland. First and foremost, man, we had a great conversation before the show. It's like we had 3 shows into one. First and foremost, Dallin, how you doing, man?
Things are good, man. Like I'm living my best life. That's what it feels like. It feels like there's been a real journey and that the things I'm putting out there in the world are really lifting me up and just in a good place right now.
And you staying busy yourself. You also are a podcast host of your own platform, Yield Today with Dallin Candland. Before we dive into your book, kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself. And you also said on the show you're going to do a little performance of a little poem thing. So I'll let you have the floor, man.
Yeah, man. I graduated from BYU, Idaho in marketing in 2022. And just had a lot of different things fall apart. And then it kind of causes you to have all these conversations with yourself that could be kind of self-destructive. And was like, well, why did I go to school for 4 years? And this one job that I had, job offer, fell through. And I've been doing YouTube. I did a gaming YouTube channel when I was in my teens and got to serve a 2-year mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So yeah, living my life for God, man, and just really learning to trust him completely. There's been times I haven't trusted him completely and I've seen things just fall apart. So I just kind of be like, all right, what if I gave it all completely to you and stopped listening to the voices outside and just let him create something new in me and create a new heart and everything. And that's where this book came from.
In the book, man, I had a chance you gave me a little copy to review for preparation. And I have to say, man, definitely inspirational. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are in that space right now where they need someone to talk to, someone to listen, and someone to give them, obviously, clarity. And I think your book does a really good job allowing people to recognize certain things that will kind of put things back into perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, I think on a basic level, having something to look forward to is vital in this world, especially for me having ADHD. It's important to have something that's like out there. And when I graduated from college, I remember getting an email and I was going to be a for Strength of Youth counselor and help out the youth there. And I found out that the church was planning to send me to Alaska. And I was like, yo, Alaska, like, yo, that's crazy. I'm like, God has bigger plans, man. And so it was like when there was all this stress and fear and living at my cousin's house and, just felt like low of low, there was still this moment, this beautiful thing that God had prepared for me. And that kind of goes into this poem I wanted to share really quickly with your audience. And it's about my time in Alaska. Alaska is like another world. Father, Alaska is like another world. I can never put this into words. This is too beautiful. The youth think I'm swell. You're sending me messages through them. Messages I'm sure you've been eager to tell. It's a beautiful wing to catch a metallic wing and then give all my heart and give myself a fresh start. That was the only way. I still have so much to say, but I'm putting you and your mercies ahead of my cares. I feel the light in these souls. They call me in my despairs. I'd heard some things about Alaska before, but it's far more grand when I'm actually there. I feel so loved here. I feel thy tender care. Thank you. And I think sometimes we get told things, but the reality could be so much grander if God is in it. And God was 100% in me being in Alaska and just being able to make an impact for youth right off the bat. And even though I was in this kind of rocky place, I stood with him and had these beautiful moments. And that gave me a lot of peace, man. And being able to write about the experience, I wrote these poems, a lot of them pretty recently. He just gave them to me from my experiences, and it's just a beautiful gift.
And that sets up perfectly the book that you wrote that we're going to be discussing, Guys Talking to Me. And like I said in the intro, the show is, the book is like decoding how God is connecting to us. And a lot of times we can overcomplicate things, and it's a balance with God, because he doesn't make things completely too simple, but he makes things very clear. And what I mean by that is, how many times people read the Bible and be like, hey, that doesn't make sense. Why is this so complicated? It's all this storytelling and all this parables and all these chapters and all these verses. And that's my point. He doesn't make it like super, super simple, but it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it came to mind from that, man, was like God rewards the seeker. He rewards the person that searches deep for it. And it says it all throughout the scripture that those who search for him will find him. And it says in Acts 17:27 that those who search for him will find and feel him. They'll feel after him and find that he's not very far. I think sometimes we just kind of need to take that step back and go on a walk or just kind of spend some time with ourselves. A lot of the greatest athletes would meditate. I know Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, legend, he would spend time in meditation and just kind of recenter himself. And I have a friend who played semi-competitive Smash Bros, and he'd meditate before his matches, and it helped him get in the zone. I feel like God wants us to be in the zone and wants us to be with him when we're doing things and when we're doing life. And life is so much better that way.
I like the key thing you said there. Recenter. Like, that goes hand in hand with the shows about like refocus. Like you need to focus on your goals daily, focus on opportunities daily versus like focus on the bad things, focus on the negativity. To your point, we physically, after we refocus mentally, we physically need to recenter. Touch on that, because I think you're going on something with that point, because we do physically need to recenter ourselves into alignment of what is meant for us.
Yeah, a big part of the book, a lot of the theme is kind of a surrender, is sharing, okay, here are all my feelings, but I know you're going to help me with these things. I'm not going to let these things take me over. And I remember this one day when I was in Alaska, and it was really late, up to like 11 or so p.m. and trying to help these youth make sure they don't get out of their beds and stuff, and praying with them, and then falling to my knees and being like, man, this is crazy. Because Alaska, it was in June, so Alaska was like really bright out. It was still really bright out. It's like bright like 21 hours of the day, and it was still really bright out. And I just fell to my knees and like, God, I really need help with this. And there was a song that they came out with for the youth to listen to, and it's called Divine. And it just talks about how you're a divine child of God and that he's got you. And I remember listening to that by my bedside on my knees and just thinking like, yes, he will take care of me. And this is just a moment. It's a moment to connect with him, and I don't want to waste it. And I need to remember that I can fall to my knees and find that peace. And so that's been a lot of it, is falling to my knees when it feels like things are falling apart, just so I can, like exactly what you said, recenter and let these things kind of come together, rehearse to myself, yes, he is looking out for me. He did all these things. And I just need to have that on my mind when I go out into the next day, and not think about, maybe I'm stressed or maybe I'm tired. It's like there would be many, many blessings. I think one of the scriptures that helped me so much was in Lamentations 3:23. And it just says that God's mercies are new every morning. And that's something I really learned to look forward to. And I've seen that when I've looked forward to it.
We're talking to our guest, Dallin Candland, and his book that he wrote, God is Trying to Talk to Me, a collection of poems by Dallin Candland. Your book has a theme of recurring theme, I should say, of patience and self-love. And despite challenges that comes, I do believe that God in the Bible, he does give us truth and direction and discipline, but he also reminds us that he is patient with us.
Yeah. I think of the conversation we had beforehand, and you saying how you're prioritizing more the audio of your content and working on that and getting that as crisp as you can get it. Maybe it took some time to get to that point where you can make that decision, but it says it in Proverbs 16:3, commit thy works unto the Lord and all thy thoughts will be established. And if you are committing those things to him, that he can guide you in that path. And I was thinking about this earlier, so I'll just share this with your audience. The most wonderful thing you can give God is something to help you with. When I had that in high school, and I'd be like, hey, I have this gaming YouTube channel. I want you to help me with reaching people all over the world with this. And he did. He put people in people's paths, and I still keep in touch with some of them. But it is beautiful when you give him something like that, and you give him your life, to lift that up and to bring that out. Cause it really is not about us at all. It's about the impact we can make. And it sounds kind of trite, but, bringing him out into the world to lift up other people.
We do live in a world where it feels like sometimes jump in the label box because they all have one for you, right? Everyone has to have this label, this, you're that, you're not this, you're not that. You in the book, you embrace individuality. And the main point with that is you talk about ADHD, kind of discuss that and how you use that in the book to kind of point out your individual self, but how you use that to really make connection with God.
It's interesting because I believe God has given us all gifts and he's given us those gifts for a reason. And I have a gift of being able to go extremely deep, whether it's conversation or study or research. And yeah, that poem talks about like, I'm trying to understand why you made me this way. If we can make an ocean out of a 3-inch pool, and I think of the things I've been able to do with God's help. And if I didn't have that, it would be really difficult to be able to do those things. And so it's something that just kind of recurred in my teens. But when I got into track, I was able to completely focus on that mission of getting better in track and saw my grades and everything else improve because I was focused on that one mission. And I just saw my whole life elevate. And I feel like the ADHD is a lot of it's like a warrior instinct. You want to have something to fight for more than anything. Like I'm always fighting. I'm always thinking. I'm always hungry for what's next. And I think it can be a great weakness, but it can also be a great strength because it's pushing you to get better and it's pushing you to work and to grow. And yeah, I was 20 when I was on my mission and we had this snowstorm and we couldn't go outside for a couple of days. And my life just kind of started to fall apart in my head. And we went and met with a counselor and he's like, bro, I think you have ADHD. And it's taken some time and it's something I denied, especially when I was in college. I was like, no, I just got to, do what everybody else is doing. And I think there's times where it was like better than others, but the Pomodoro method, has been pretty helpful for me and things of that nature. And as I've been doing this rebuilding of myself, the ADHD is a key part of it. And so now I build my whole life around the ADHD instead of running from it. I celebrate it. And that has led to a lot of growth.
In the book is 50 poems. 25 is written from your perspective, and the other 25 is written from God's. Kind of address that the audience and why you chose to format it in that way.
Yeah, it started with just 25 of the God talking to me because those are the poems that I'd already written. I was just kind of praying one day and was kind of stressed out, and I just pulled it up on my phone and I read one of them is The Planting of Your Stars. I read that one and I just felt it. I was like, wow, I wrote this and I didn't do anything with it. What am I doing? And I think that night I wrote like a couple more. It just hit me and I just felt it. And then when it came to putting the book together, as I was doing that, I just felt it, like you need to make this more personal. And so I was able to write 25 poems in 3 days, which were 25 poems from those 25 moments, like the one in Alaska and all the other ones in the book, the ADHD one. But yeah, God helped me select those 25 moments to help there be that narrative, that back and forth. So it's like you have that kind of monologue, almost like help, and it's all these things like, thank you. And then you get the answer. And I believe that God holds back answers sometimes because it is for our ultimate good. And because we need to learn things beforehand. But when we do learn and we do understand more why we are here and we understand that answer he's been preparing for us, it's a beautiful thing, man.
I'm glad you said that because I think that's true. The answers that we are sometimes trying to rush him to give us, he's giving the opposite response. And that is, wait, whoa, you don't see what I see. I see everything beyond the bend of the road. You don't see that, but I see that before you even do. And what's funny is like, we can't see that physically. Like, it's not like I can just go to his office and say, hey man, I need to talk to you and sit down and have a sip of coffee and talk about life. But he does it in various ways as far as how he communicates with us. Kind of touched on that because it's one thing to write these letters. It's another thing to actually know you're actually connecting to God, not just like talking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the way to really tell if it really is God talking to you is it feels like a personal reaching. Like what I felt from God is deeper than what I felt from any person. I'll give you just a super quick example. When I was 14, I didn't make the basketball team in high school, and my mom helped me to be like, hey, how about you be the manager, and then you can maybe work your way up to being on the team. And there was this one day where the coach was like, hey, we're going to do our practice. And usually I'd like watch the practice and help out, but he's like, we need you to arrange all of the jerseys and stuff in the locker room, and it needs to all be completely perfect when I come back. And he shut the door, and I was just me by myself for like 90 minutes in this room. I didn't leave. And I'd never really, I mean, obviously I'd done some stuff like that, but I was a little stressed out about it. And so I moved around a bunch of the jerseys and stuff. And I was like, what am I doing? And so I did. I just fell on my knees, and I was like, God, help me out, man. This is crazy. I don't know what's going on. And I just felt lost. I felt hurt. I felt like, I don't know, this happened so quickly. Like I was used to helping out with the practice. I was used to just kind of getting to know the players better and that side. But then all of a sudden I was taken away from that comfort and put into a place where I had nowhere else to turn but to God. And I felt that peace with him. And I felt that from video games, man. I've felt that from other things. God will talk to you in a personal way, and sometimes in ways that feels completely unique to you, and only you and him would understand it. It's that personal relationship. And I think it's something you need to highlight and try to keep an eye on, because as our book of life is being written, it's important to maybe touch on some of those recurring themes, and maybe, like I said, highlight it, and then you can go scroll through your life and flip through the pages. But, oh, yeah, God was there and he made that happen. He helped that happen because this fell apart. And then the very next day this happened. And then you can kind of draw a line. But yeah, I believe that a lot of life is helping us to understand how much God loves us and how much he wants to help us out, man.
Man, that's a very interesting perspective, because I'm a visual person. So a lot of times when people talk, my mind just starts playing a movie. And I had like a picture of life, like this grand thing, right? But if you funnel it down, it's the small details of our choices that paints the picture of our life. And even though we don't have the power to do things beyond our control, we do have the power of making these small, intricate choices that help shape our life. A question for you is, when it comes to the small beginnings, you know, the whole journey, we kind of overlook sometimes the small wins we have. Why is it important for us to recognize those small details and remind ourselves, man, I've been through this before. If I survived that last crazy storm, why can't I, just understand that I can probably make it through this one as well?
It's really important to spend time in your own highlight reel, because there's something that was keeping that version of yourself going when they were going through that thing. We're going full circle. Having something to look forward to is one of the best things you can have in your life. When I was going through my braces at like 14, and it was really painful sometimes. And, it's like sometimes socializing with people was weird. And I was like 5'6" or 5'7" back then. I'm 6'5" now, so it's just a different time. But something kept me going, and especially during track, was I wanted nothing more than to make the basketball team. And so I pushed myself extremely hard, probably more than if I'd actually made the team. And I still never made the team. And senior year, I got pretty close. But having something to look forward to is one of the best things, man. And so for me, I'm looking forward to speaking at schools. I'm looking forward to getting this in more hands. I'm looking forward to, going on more runs and being my old mile time from high school. There's a lot of things I'm looking forward to. And when you can look back at those seeds you once planted and look at those and what they've borne, the fruit they've borne or haven't borne, you can be like, well, there was something that I did. There was some decision I made, and I continued forward. And so I do that. I try to remember that with some of the times where I was really stressed out, but I chose to go on a run, or I chose to write a poem, or I chose to just give it to God. Those are things that can really remind you and help you keep going when this new crazy thing that seems almost impossible to manage gets in your path, it's like, okay, God has brought me through things before and he will bring me through it again. And rehearsing that stuff to yourself, man, that's a powerful, powerful thing.
We're talking to our guest, Dallin Candland, in his book that you can get right now. Amazon is Guys Trying to Talk to Me, a collection of poems by Dallin Candland. When it comes to what you did with your experience on mission, that experience you have, the experience you have with writing your book, these are experiences of you participating, not just sitting on the sidelines and waiting for life to go by. You actually got into the unknown, uncomfortable seasons. Looking back and looking at the goals you have in the future for yourself, how did those experiences help formulate what it is God's doing through, not just your gifts and talents, but your ability to follow through?
I think one thing that God is doing in me right now is teaching me to just change moments. Like I can change a moment. I can go deep. I can talk to somebody. And I went to a high school track meet on Saturday, and I'm sure those youth were, expecting a certain thing, but there was a couple times where I got to be there and share a poem or something with them or prayer with them, and just kind of change that moment. And they were saying like, thank you for talking to me. And so what comes to mind from my mission and from all the other things where I was an active participant is that you do have a ability to shape this moment to a certain degree. And I was also going to say something about one of my favorite concepts is from The Magic of Thinking Big. And it's the concept of the sell yourself to yourself commercial. And it's to more or less remind yourself of the journey you've been on and sell yourself on yourself over and over again. That's what I always am working on, selling myself on myself. So I don't ever get cold to myself. I remember what I've been through and what I want to do, because we can get resold on Coca-Cola and we'll keep buying it or something. And yet we don't sell ourselves on ourselves, our dreams and our goals and our ambition. And like, hey, Shemaiah, he's been working in the music industry. Like, look at all these lives he's helped change. Look at the smile on his face. Look at how many people he lifted up when he was in high school and college. And look at what he's looking out for right now and how many guests he's made a difference for. Shemaiah is somebody that you want to get to know. You want to get to know his heart. You want to get to know his soul. His soul is worth knowing. His soul is worth believing in. His soul is worth, dreaming with, and you start putting yourself through that script and you remind yourself of that and you become extremely powerful. I believe that's what God has been teaching me about, is that he could do that for any single one of us. He'd be like, if a girl was named Lucy, like Lucy is vibrant. She is wonderful. She is beautiful. She is mine. I see what she is doing with her life. I see how she has been there for that boyfriend that he was having a really rough time. I see how she was there for her baby brother. I see how he was there for her dying mother. And he could just rattle all these things off and it would completely change our worldview. I'm a lot like you, Shemaiah, in that I have the visual stuff. So when I start talking, I'll just like see these things in my mind too. And I feel excited. I feel that vision of peace and hope when I speak that stuff into existence. And when I hear it, that I spoke it into existence once and I want to see it over and over again. And I think that's what God is teaching me a lot through all these things. Like you can shape a lot of your reality by how you talk to yourself and how you talk about others.
In life, a lot of times warning signs can go off, they go off in your car, something's not right. Your tires will let you know super fast if there's not enough air in them for you to drive. I mean, just give it some time. A lot of things happen and it can be a sign, a warning, or it can just be a sign showing a failure of neglecting the things that we should be doing or should be like eating healthy or exercising or spending time with God, whatever, the list is long. Understanding those situations. We live in a generation world where, I don't know, you chime in. Do you feel like a lot of times this whole Christian talk, this whole like God talk is painted with a broad brush and how people think Christians are versus like me and you talking right now, just having a normal conversation. People like, like these pretty cool people to talk to, hang out with. Like, why do you think it's such a divided perspective on Christians and how we live versus how we should live?
Well, the very beginning of the book, it gets very deep very quickly. And it just says, friends, like, I'm asking you I have one ask with this book, and that's to give everything to God and to tell him everything that's on your mind. And if you are willing to tell him every single thing that is going on in your life and tell him every single thing you want and every single thing you're working on, I think, I know for sure we'd all have more love as we went out and about and talked with each other. But there's some insecurities holding us back. There's things that we haven't addressed. There's things that we want to go past, but we don't know how. And maybe while we're talking to somebody, we're thinking about, a lot of our thoughts are repeated over and over again, right? Yeah. And so unless we do something about it, and then our thoughts can shift and be on a different path. And I just kind of came to me, it's like a kid at a water slide. I remember going to this pool and there's like this water slide, and there's somebody that would be waiting and being like, okay, go down the slide. And then you wait for that person to go through, and then the next one can. But if people don't let themselves go and letting some things go through, then they won't have anything new to talk about. And so a lot of things do get same old, rerun after rerun. And bro, for me, that gets me so crazed, and like, I cannot live like that at all. Like, I want the new, I want the growth, I want the change. I want to see the old with that brand new perspective. And that can only really happen with growth. I think a lot of people are denying that. They're denying themselves the chance of that. And I'll be so bold as to say they are suffering in some way more than they need to. And I have certainly been in that camp. I find that I'm very good at telling myself stories, and that's very useful with like podcasting or anything like that, or something of a faith-based or looking forward to the future thing. But if it's like stress or whatever that's starting the story, it's like, I'm no good. And you give yourself all these reasons. And again, that's not a fulfilling script. That's not an uplifting place to play your life from. And I think there's a lot of people that forget kind of, that God's perspective is way, way, way higher and full of love, full of vision. And I think some people are scared to live that way, man.
Divine dialogue. Conversations. Guys, try and talk to you, whoever's listening to this, because that's exactly what we basically talking about in this podcast episode, and that is, he has a way to connect, but he doesn't force us to. That's the catch right there. He doesn't actually force you to pick up the phone when he calls you. I'm just, saying in a figurative perspective, he is trying to get your attention. And once he gets it, is what you do with it. Because, for example, if not to make it too simple, but if someone decide that they are going to be more active, eat healthier, that's a choice. But until they actually apply that every day, they're not growing. Growing is when you get tired of the pain of neglect. And that neglect is basically the very thing that is going to propel you when you're growing. So if you're neglecting eating healthier, exercising more, surrounding yourself with better folk, then the process of that neglecting what you really need, we tend to gravitate to things that we don't need. And until the day comes when we stop gravitating to the things that we don't need and start going back to the things that are actually nurturing our minds and our souls, then we'll always be failing when it comes to growth.
It's profound, man. It's profound.
When you look at the opportunities you have, you mentioned about being able to speak. What do you hope young people can take away from this episode? Because I feel like we care a lot to older people and older generations. We sometimes forget the next generation is vital for passing the torch, if you will. What do you hope that they will be able to gain from your book and your perspective with connecting with God?
I think on a basic level, it's just to live in love. I feel love is like one of the highest frequencies of life and places that you can be. There's been times where I've written a poem recently, Shemaiah, and I write it and I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't really feel like love. And I don't really want to put this out. And I have like my standard and everything. But when I push that away and I just kind of let myself feel all those feelings from that, But there's times where the very next poem I write just feels filled with that love. And so it would be to do those little tiny things that show love and just let the love speak through that thing. I remember this one time, this is very small, but in high school, I remember this person like dropped their pencil and they're reaching down to get it. And I just remember, it's like an almost everyday occurrence, but there's this one time I remember doing it and just picking up the pencil and giving it to him, just being like, I helped out this person in this moment. And just doing those tiny little things to uplift and help. There's a hymn that I sing in church, and the second verse of it, the song is just all about like scattering sunshine as you live your life. And the second verse says, slightest actions often meet the sorest needs. And so just the tiniest little things can make such a big difference and can change how you see people. And the way when you change the way you look at things, the things change. And being willing to just let love guide you and embrace you, but also embrace that person is one of the best gifts that you can give the world. And because people will never forget how you made them feel. They might forget what you said or what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And so if you help them to feel that love and you take the time to do that, those tiny little things, and listen to those little urges from your soul to do something to lift up this person, then your soul will get stronger and so will theirs. And just to seek to live your life with love and to ask that God's love would guide you in whatever path you're taking. And even if it takes a while, just know that God will not lead you astray, and he will use all those things he's using, all those moments, he'll use those for something great. And so just to let love write your story and write you.
And there's a quote I tell people quite often, but you made me want to share the quote once again, mind the audience, and especially those who might be new. But I read a lot of quotes when I was in high school. It was just like my thing to do, and ended up studying philosophy. I went to Toledo, so it's like full circle. But it was this one quote I came across, never forgot it. It was by Blaise Pascal, and he said, "In faith, there's enough light for those who want to believe, but also enough shadows to blind those who don't." And when you talked about spreading the sunlight, scatter the sunlight, I thought about that quote immediately, because it's like, yeah, you literally can hide in the shadows or you can shine the light. And it's so easy and convenient to be in the shadows. Dark, cold, but eventually you're going to get tired of it because there's no life there. But funny thing is, when God keeps it simple, right? He's not super deep. He's not like, hey, Shemai, it's a deep thought coming into your brain. He's more like, he's going to give you logic to the point where until you get tired of being in the shadows and you finally say, okay, let's test this light, see how life gets right now. If I just test the light that he's trying to provide me. Because in that light, you find the confirmations, affirmations, the truth, the discipline, the hope. But in the shadows, it's cold, lonely, dark, and you're always going to be blaming everybody but yourself. But in the light, you see the true self. And now you're in position of growth. So, man, with that said, I want to say thanks to our guest today, Dallin Candland. Make sure you get his book. Make sure you go to his website. His website is easy, DallinCandland.com. Go check out his podcast, Yield Today with Dallin Candland. Before we let you go, what's the best way someone who want to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
I'd say LinkedIn is good. That's probably one of the best ways. And the Instagram is probably a good way too. Yeah. My Instagram is at Dallin's Yield. And yeah, you can hit me up on LinkedIn as well. And then I like to have open conversations and talk with myself about things I'm learning in the journey. So my podcast Yield Today with Dallin Candland is doing that and sharing that since I started it back in college. Those are two of the best ways to get in touch with me or to hear some of my thoughts if you'd like to do that.
Once again, like we always say on the show, Dallin, want to say thanks for your time.
Yeah, it's a real treasure. there's that one quote from Marianne Williamson that your playing small does not serve the world, and it is our light, not our darkness, that most scares us. And if you're willing to lean into that and not run away from that, you will live a fantastic, amazing life. But you might have to let some things go. Like you said, step out of the shadows, be like, here I am, God, use me. You know, like Samuel, for example, in the Bible, he had those moments where he felt God was trying to talk to him. And he decided to listen to that and to listen to that light. And it guided him down a completely different path, maybe than what he was thinking. But God had a plan for him, and God has a plan for you. And it's in his light. It's not in any shadow of this world. That's all I'll leave you with.